So this is going to be a quick video on basically how shelves work and how baby shelf works. I'm going to use BTAI as an example. They actually recently did an offering from their shelf. So as a quick recap, so a shelf, what it is, let me just find the S3 shelf offering here. So this is the original shelf, which basically what it is, this was filed back November 2nd, 2023. They're registering a dollar amount that they can sell in future offerings. So they're not doing an offering right now. This is basically just saying we're registering $350 million worth of securities that we're going to sell in the future. Those are shelf takedowns. And then sometimes you'll see them also file an ATM. In this case, they're filing an ATM in the S3 as well. And then, so from here, what you're going to see, and as you can see here with associated filings, these are filings that are linked to the shelf. You see these 424B5s. These are all offerings that they've done from the shelf. So every time they do an offering, so let's say they do a $10 million offering, then the amount available from the shelf goes down to $340 million. So these can be either ATMs, so they can do an ATM for $10 million, in which case they can sell shares in that open market from the ATM, or they can do like registered direct offerings, which is what they did recently, which is this one right here, this 424B5. And this was they sold shares and warrants at a specific set price to investors. And the way baby shelf works is basically a company that has less than $75 million in float value. So the float value is calculated by taking their float times the highest closing price in the last 60 days. And then they can only raise 1/3 of that amount. So if, let's say their float value is 74 million, though they can only raise up, a little less than $25 million. As in terms of when they're evaluated, because obviously the float value is constantly changing, right? Because the float can be, like in this case, the float goes up because they're selling shares. The float value can change because the price, the highest closing price in the last 60 days is constantly changing. So the way it works is when they initially filed this shelf here back in November 2023, at that point, they were evaluated for if they were over baby shelf. And back here, they were, so they were not subject to that rule. And they will not be subject to that rule until the next time they file an S3 or the next time they file their 10K. So they filed their 10K so they filed it March 2024, right around here. In this case, they're also going to calculate the float value. They're going to take the highest closing price in 60 days before they filed the 10K, which is somewhere around here, times the float, which at the time was split adjusted, a little over $1 million. So they were over that $75 million shelf limitation. So this whole time they had no limits on their shelf. They could raise as much as they wanted up to the maximum shelf capacity. Now they're good, right? Because they're good until next time they file an S3 or the next time they file a 10K. So now here we are in March. So their 10K is coming up. Now, in this case, they will not be over baby shelf because their float is, around 2 million. And then the highest closing price in the last 60 days is, I'm just going to eyeball it here, but it's somewhere around probably this one right here. So that's not over $75 million. So when they file their 10K, they will be subject to baby shelf rules. So I guess one way you can use this information is to anticipate that an offering is going to be a lot more likely if you think about it, this is essentially the last time they'll be able to, raise as much as they can without being subject to those limitations, because, their 10K is coming up here very soon. So those are things to pay attention to when you're looking at shelf capacity and baby shelf. Are they over it? When does it reset? Also another thing to look at is when does the capacity go down? So just to show another quick example here, SGN, I went over this in another video, but this was a scenario where they were subject to baby shelf, and I think right around here when they ran it, so here is January 29th, and then so going 60 days back, that's about around November around here. So you see the price drops drastically here. So they only have a few days really to take advantage of the amount that they can raise using this $8 closing price. So then if we go over to the SGN filings, actually on that day that it ran in the afternoon, they released this updated ATM. You see here at 1:04 p.m. Basically that they used the ATM and then they were releasing this filing to update the capacity to increase the amount they could sell. So it's important to make note of that. You know, when a stock's running, are they in a situation where in a few days or in a certain time frame, is their ability to raise or use that shelf going to be diminished, which increases the likelihood that they will use it? Because now if you look over here, now because of the highest closing price in the last 60 days, they don't have any capacity. So we have this negative value here. So just a few things to look out for when you're looking at shelf offerings and offering ability.